He's immensely seductive. Quite sure he's right. Obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
What? This is the end game.
All right, everybody. It is Wednesday, March 12th, 2025, the 52nd day of the Golden Age. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. Welcome to the Wednesday subscriber stream. We are doing it today on Substack and on Rumble for Rumble Premium members. And if you're both of those things, well then, the world is your oyster. And I hope it works well this way. I'm open to feedback if people are extraordinarily angry right now because they just got kicked off a Rumble or something like that because they're paid Substack subscribers, but not paid Rumble Premium subscribers. I know it's all getting a bit convoluted, and I do apologize for that, but I'm trying to do the best I can with these platforms as they evolve. And thankfully, the Substack platform now has live streaming, so maybe we can build something up there, and I hope that this is working out okay for everybody. If it's a problem, please tell me, but otherwise I'll assume that this is sufficient. And as always, these episodes will be up for paid subscribers immediately after the show, and the video will be in the Substack post, and then they'll be publicly available on Sunday. Okay, so today, I want to talk about, the current events of the last couple of days, the big picture broadly, but through a framing that I posed on social media last week and then at GART over the weekend, and that is thinking of Donald Trump as a cat owner with a laser pointer and the global regime, the media, and the Trump deranged, the supporters of the Uniparty, etc., being the cat. And if you're not familiar with how cats do with laser pointers, let me explain it to you this way. Now, if you're just home and listening to the audio, then you are hearing this very catchy, up-tempo, bluesy rock tune. And that's about as much as I can do for you. But to let you know what's happening, cats are chasing laser pointers all over the place. And as you might imagine, never seizing the laser pointer as they think they will. And perhaps that's enough of that. So that is Donald Trump, the cat owner, and the regime, the media, and the rest of them are the cat. They are never going to catch the laser pointer, but they will follow it wherever it goes until they are worn out. And then after a brief rest of licking their paws and perhaps their nether regions, they go right back to chasing the laser pointer. And Donald Trump, I guess, finds it incredibly amusing. and continues to give them things to chase. So we're going to think about that a little bit today as we get into all of these stories. And I want to start out with something else that is a little funny. We have the Retards in Space miniseries potentially concluding this week. Here is member of the fantasy team and so-called Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth.
10 is scheduled to launch tonight. It's a joint effort between NASA and SpaceX. You know, President Trump said to Elon Musk, get the astronauts home and do it now. And they're responding. And they're bringing NASA astronauts, which also happen to be retired U.S. Navy Captain Butch Wilmore and retired U.S. Navy Captain Suni Williams, home. Now, the Department of Defense is also proud to have multiple branches and 2 active duty U.S. military officers represented in the mission that's kicking off tonight between NASA and SpaceX. You got U.S. Army Colonel Ann McClain and U.S. Air Force Major Nicole Ayers. So this is Army, Air Force, and Navy tonight. I just want to take a brief moment to say that we are praying for you. We wish you Godspeed, and we look forward to welcoming you all home soon.
All righty then, Pete. Thank you for showing us those women who are about to go rescue the 2 people who are supposedly stuck on the space station. Now, Boeing can't get up there to do it. They've tried over and over again. It hasn't worked. And we've been told over and over and over again that the problem with Boeing is their DEI practices. And we've been seeing planes crash all over the place, or at least videos of planes crashing and stories about planes crashing. And we are told that those are DEI problems as well, and a problem with women pilots, which is totally rude. Women, I agree, especially just days after International Women's Day. But I guess they're going to go save those 2 people who have been stuck in space for a very long time. They have received Christmas decorations, thank goodness. You wouldn't want them to miss out on the most wonderful time of the year just because they're stuck in outer space and have been for, 9 months or a year or something. They were supposed to be up there for a little while. It's like Gilligan's Island in space, except apparently they haven't started mating yet. I feel like they did that on Gilligan's Island, even if it wasn't necessarily on screen. So apparently that's going to be solved by Elon Musk. I mean, he fires rockets off all the time and most of them crash, but this one is probably going to get all the way up there into outer space through that deep black infinite void and to the space station. And I guess maybe the space station is just in low Earth orbit or something. So it's really just in the sky. And I don't know why they don't just call it like a floating city or something. But hey, I'm sure it's all real. I'm sure it's all real. Speaking of things that are real, this is Alina Habba yesterday. If only I can find it. Here we are.
Show. Look at the room that they put me in. We're in Biden's fake Oval Office, everybody. And I've actually figured this out. I now know why. I now get it. Turn the camera around. There is a screen, teleprompter to the face. All I can say is the last administration was a disgrace.
Okay. So we are, I guess, supposed to assume that she is saying the Italian the Italian word disgrazia in the kind of Brooklyn slang, the American Italian where you cut off those last letters. It's very Sopranos, like the gabagool. So it's a disgrace. She says that's Joe Biden's fake Oval Office. I don't know. Did anybody actually believe that was an Oval Office? It never looked like the Oval Office at all. and it was widely reported that was across the street in the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. She says that the reason he was in there is so that he could look at the teleprompter on the screen across from him. And of course, that's something that we knew 4 years ago. So none of that is news, except maybe she's out there waking up the normies. I'm told that they only wake up through a series of repetitive lies that build on one another, convincing them that all the lies are actually the reality. And then one day they'll be like, wait a second, all these people you told me to trust are lying to me. Now I'm awake. That's what happens, don't you know? That's how to wake up the normies, lie to them forever in a way that seems real. But in case that's not it, perhaps we could just tell them the truth. And the truth is that Joe Biden was never president. He really didn't spend much time in the Oval Office at all. And then they built another Oval Office just right down the street at an office building. In fact, they built a replica of the entire White House and the White House grounds in that office building. But it's a museum, and people can take tours of it and have pictures of themselves taken in the White House so that they have the same status that Joe Biden had, which is someone pretending to be president. Now, this has become more of a problem over the past week or so, at least in the normie sphere, of course. It was always a problem for anyone who was actually paying attention. But, you know, we can't really expect people to be paying attention unless they are receiving the incoming constant wave of lies from the people they are told to trust in the mainstream media. Now, if I could just find, here we are. There we are. Perfect. So we also have a controversy over Joe Biden's signatures, which is another issue that we talked about the entire time. Hey, that's not Joe Biden's signature. People looked at historic signatures of Joe Biden, and the signature that he was using, well, it never matched those. And people say signatures change, and that's fine. My signature has never been consistent. I don't think I've ever signed two things the same way. I don't care at all. I scribble and I move on. Here is a video that has gone around quite a lot about Joe Biden's various signatures on the pardons that were filed right before the fake president left his position as fake president. And you will see them all coming together. Oh, hey, look at that. It's exactly the same. Well, is that amazing? Is it not? I don't know. But it is an indication, most people have taken that as an indication, that these signatures are done with what's called an auto pen. Alina Habba had a busy day yesterday. She came back and explained this to the information operator, Benny Johnson.
Attorney, like forging a signature, is obviously a very serious crime. You can't uphold the document if it was fraudulent, if the individual didn't sign it or have any understanding of this is what power of attorney is, actually. And so are you making the case, some legal scholars at Heritage Foundation have made this case, that these executive orders or laws that Joe Biden signed may not actually be valid if he, in fact, didn't sign them?
I think if you sign any document and you don't have capacity, the mental capacity and inability to know what you're signing, it does challenge the validity of a document. It's not something that I've looked into as of yet. Obviously, this is new news, but I will definitely be recommending that we look into it. I think that it's strange. I would really like to know, most importantly, who signed it, if he knew that it was being signed. Obviously it's not a fake signature, it's an auto signature, but the point is, it's inappropriate. You are the commander in chief. This is big deal stuff that you're doing. And to see that most were auto signatures, that's concerning. That's really concerning. We have to look into it.
All right. Well, I wish them well on looking into it. Perhaps Benny Johnson can get all his BuzzFeed contacts and figure this out, get to the bottom of it. I'm sure it'll end somewhere other than Joe Biden was never actually elected president. never properly certified, never properly inaugurated, and was not for a single day a real and legitimate president. He did not receive 81 million real lawful American votes, and there's no proof anywhere that he did. Joe Biden is not president and never was president. That's the reason why everything Joe Biden did is invalid. And instead of that, we are getting a narrative explanation for the normie sphere, and certainly targeted at the normie sphere, to explain the future event of the nullification of any policies put forward or, quote unquote, signed into law by the fake and illegitimate President Joe Biden. These were things that we talked about for years. This was the sort of thing that about which I would have said and have said, none of this matters because Joe Biden's not a real president. All of this will be nullified because Joe Biden's not a real president. And people said, look at that conspiracy theorist. He's crazy. We can see that Joe Biden's president because all the people on television are calling Joe Biden president. He must be president. No, he mustn't be president. There is no rationale behind believing what you see on television as the truth, especially when you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that there was no possibility Joe Biden received 81 million real lawful American votes. So, a few days ago, Fox News publishes this article, reprinted in MSN, in case you are getting confused. Biden's AutoPen signature appears on most official documents, raising concerns over who controlled the White House. Ah, yes, it's very confusing. Whoever controlled the AutoPen controlled the presidency, the Oversight Project, which is an initiative with the Conservative Heritage Foundation that investigates the government to bolster transparency, posted to X, formerly Twitter, on Thursday. We gathered every document we could find with Biden's signature over the course of his presidency. All used the same AutoPen signature, except for the announcement that the former president was dropping out of the race last year. Here is the AutoPen signature, blah, blah, blah. Isn't it amazing that the fake dropout letter, wait, was there even a signature on that? But that would be the one, oh, maybe when he dropped out of the race, that was official. The rest of it, not official. By the way, Heritage Foundation, that's the Project 2025 group. They couldn't be a project of Con Inc. No way. The rest of the signatures, though, AutoPen. Now, Republican Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey sent a letter to the Department of Justice on Wednesday of last week, demanding an investigation be opened into whether Biden's, quote, cognitive decline allowed unelected staff to push through radical policy without his knowing approval. There are profound reasons to suspect that Biden's staff and political allies exploited his mental decline to issue purported presidential orders without his knowing approval, the letter read. Speaker Johnson, for example, reported that staff and elected officials, including former Vice President Kamala Harris and former Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, tried to prevent Johnson from meeting with Biden. Though presidents always have gatekeepers, in Biden's case, the walls around him were higher and the controls greater, according to Democrat lawmakers, donors, and aides who worked for Biden and other administrations. Staff limited Biden's ability to speak with others and limited the sources of information he consumed. Okay, so now we have a state attorney general asking for an investigation to be opened about Joe Biden's signatures and his dementia, and whether his dementia might invalidate all the things he did. This is Mike Johnson. My good buddy, John Harold, located this old clip. This is actually from the Barry Weiss News website, the Free Press, sponsored by tech billionaire Mark Andreessen. Here is Mike Johnson.
Real quickly, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? I cannot answer this from my constituents in Louisiana. Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. I said, Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that.
Okay. Sure, that's real. Brian CanCon and I had a discussion about this morning on Badlands Daily. And the suggestion is that Andrew Bailey is doing the dementia thing related to the signatures as some kind of opening salvo to Normieville to get them to understand the things that were done under the Biden administration are invalid and nullified because Biden didn't actually have knowledge of these things. He was dealing with dementia the entire time, and he didn't sign any of these documents. It's impossible to know if someone on his staff, his staff secretary, potentially, would have just used the auto pen to sign whatever the deep state, the bureaucratic administrative state, put in front of the office of the president, and therefore nothing had the presidential imprimatur. Joe Biden didn't do it. Therefore, it's all null and void. Okay. And then maybe later on, they'll find out that Joe Biden was never actually president. But for now, it's important to know that nothing Joe Biden did actually counts. The real interesting thing is that the Congress and the Senate also weren't legitimate. So, of course, nothing Joe Biden did counts. Not a real president, not a real Senate, not a real Congress. I'm a conspiracy theorist. I've been saying all of that for, 4.5 years now? Well over 4 years now. While people call me crazy and all this other nonsense. Is that the correct explanation, though? That's the question. Is this some kind of operation that's going to be rolled out in stages so that the public can figure out step by step that Joe Biden wasn't president and everything he did or was said to have done by the television, the same people who are waking up the normies? All that stuff will be nullified. Or is this just a narrative layer to cover up the nullification of what Joe Biden did with an explanation that is totally false and protects the system? Because that explanation is totally false. Now, it may well be true that there was an auto pen, and it may well be true that Joe Biden is demented and was the whole time, but no one said anything. None of the congressmen, none of the senators ever said, hey, that guy never received 81 million real lawful American votes. To be fair, maybe 3 or 4 did. Something like 150 objected to the Electoral College certification, so they get a pass. Beyond them, no, nothing. And this should have been something that was present throughout Biden's term. Everything he wanted to do, no, that man does not have the power to do that because he is not a real president. He was not actually elected. He was not legitimately certified, and he was not legitimately inaugurated. But they didn't say that, and they didn't make it clear to the nation that he was demented, save for a few of them. They went right along with the whole charade the entire time, and they still go along. They still go along with all the charades. So why would anyone give them the benefit of the doubt that this is all just an op to wake up the normies? The truth is the truth. The truth is Joe Biden was never elected. Anything less than that is totally unsatisfactory and unacceptable. And anyone pitching that should be called out immediately as a liar. It doesn't matter if they're doing an op to wake up the normies. You telling them, hey, that op's not good enough, we want the truth, is not going to ruin the normie waking up process, okay? Because all they need is that base layer, that foundational layer to be reached. And it already has been reached. That layer should be irrefutable for them. Oh, he never signed these things. Oh, he's clearly demented. Fine. But that's not enough for the American public, and that shouldn't be enough for us. We shouldn't sit there and applaud along. Thank you for continuing to lie to my friends and family. I love it when they're hoodwinked in a way that benefits me. That is the exact same strategy the enemy uses, which is why we should not be certain it's not the enemy using it now. And that's why you have to demand the truth at every turn. I would hope that one day people will understand that lesson. I am becoming a little dismayed because it seems like people will not. In fact, it seems like people have no interest whatsoever in coming to terms with that lesson because it means a whole lot of other things would therefore change. And that is unfortunate. Let us go to another member of the fantasy team. Again, a frequent, if not nearly constant, employee of Fox News, the so-called Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. This is from Monday. She said, per POTUS directive, I have revoked security clearances and barred access to classified information for Antony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, Lisa Monaco, Mark Zaid, Norm Eisen, Letitia James, Alvin Bragg, and Andrew Weissman, along with the 51 signers of the Hunter Biden disinformation letter. The president's daily brief is no longer being provided to former President Biden. So how about that? Tulsi still pretending that Joe Biden was a real president. And maybe that is the Donald Trump policy, to pretend that Joe Biden was actually president. And maybe Tulsi is restricted by that policy. So that part we don't have to blame on her. But the questionable part is why Tulsi Gabbard is announcing that she has done this. Because Donald Trump did this, and he did it almost 2 months ago. Legitimately, 7 weeks ago, Donald Trump did that. The president is the plenary authority on national security matters, and of course, security clearances would be one of those. He signed an executive order revoking their security clearances. He doesn't need Tulsi Gabbard to do that. The Director of National Intelligence was a position created just over 20 years ago as a result of the Patriot Act that was a result of 9/11. So how could it be possible that one of the critical qualifications for the revocation of a security clearance would be a Director of National Intelligence effectuating it? Donald Trump did that before Tulsi Gabbard was ever confirmed. Does that mean it's not been in effect till now? The rest of the government was just giving these people information because Tulsi Gabbard hadn't acted yet? Why didn't she do it as one of her first jobs, if that was the case? And so I have to wonder if perhaps this part of the Tulsi Gabbard story, put forward by Tulsi Gabbard on X, formerly Twitter, and put forward by Fox News and the rest of Con Inc. media, and by the Normie podcast sphere and the Con Inc. influencers over on X, formerly Twitter, groveling before Tulsi Gabbard, a television character, making sure that everybody knows, oh, Tulsi Gabbard, she's so important. Look at how hardcore she is. She's going after the 51 former intelligence officials that we told you. Signed the Hunter Biden laptop is Russian disinformation letter. Did Tulsi Gabbard do that? No. The answer is no. So why is she saying she did that? My guess is that just like the rest of the fantasy team, with all these ridiculous, preposterous stories that Donald Trump has already taken care of, and now they're taking credit for them, all that stuff was scripted. And they, on that other level of government, that illegitimate level, were supposed to be playing out that script with someone else as the president, whether it was Ronald DeSantis or J.D. Hamill, now J.D. Vance, or Nimrata Haley. If any of them were president, we would be seeing the exact same script playing out for the fantasy team. All these people would be doing the exact same things, drawing the attention to themselves, seeming like they were very important in the administration. Oh, and what management and delegation, all these people, they're doing all these important things. Tulsi's over there. Pete's saving astronauts. Wowie, wow, wow, wow. Where is it? Where is it?
Wow. Wowie, wow, wow, wow.
What a fantasy team. Thank goodness we became so familiar with all these people on Fox News and Tucker Carlson's Shillfest. Otherwise, we wouldn't feel so comfortable trusting them with everything we have, to the point where we'll trust them over Donald Trump. If they say something is still a problem or some bill has to pass through the House or through the Senate, well, I guess it does, and Trump is just kayfabing. It's amazing what people are prepared to believe after remaining totally addicted to the television and the mainstream podcasters for the last 5 years, while they lie constantly to millions of people at a time, making millions of dollars a month. These people make more in a week than you make in a year. And everybody's like, grovel, grovel, grovel. Gotta grovel. Can't stop the grovel. Donald Trump says grovel. Don't you trust Donald Trump? Hey, guys, Donald Trump has never, ever, ever said grovel. Why would Donald Trump say grovel? He doesn't want people to grovel. But gosh, people just love a high-quality grovel. Just like this. Hold on, where are we? Hold the processing. Just like that. Grovel before the television. The television is your master. Let us continue. Here is a far more interesting television character. We're going to talk about Elon Musk for a bit, but we're going to start out with more anti-Elon, quote-unquote, protests.
While the rich dream of Nazi robots and swastikas, what the rest of us need is warm housing, clean and affordable energy, and cheap public transportation.
Well, that's interesting. Elon is potentially going to be providing a great deal of cheap, affordable energy and probably inexpensive transportation. He's the one putting self-driving cabs out there. We'll see how that goes. But what a ridiculous protest. Those are the Just Stop Oil communists pouring some sort of orange paint or whatever on a display of one of Elon's robots, Nazi robots and swastikas on cars. Did he say swastikars, or was that just his British accent that makes R's at the end of words where they weren't actually? So quite a bold protest there. Donald Trump has been getting Elon Musk's back, although, crazy enough, Truth Social is losing its mind today. Truth Social is having a great deal of difficulty. It's been down, and it's been back up, and it's been back down, and it's been back up. I don't know if I will be able to find these now, because unfortunately, okay, here is one of them. This will work. I think that I have captured Trump's Elon posts from the last couple of days. We can at least do this one, but unfortunately, Truth Social's not popping up to allow me to share those. And I should have learned my lesson the other day after the Twitter outage. And that one, I actually had the graphics saved. Trump said this about Elon on Monday. To Republicans, conservatives, and all great Americans, separating Republicans and conservatives, which is interesting. and separating them both from great Americans. Elon Musk is, quote unquote, putting it on the line in order to help our nation, and he is doing a fantastic job, in all caps. But the radical left lunatics, as they often do, are trying to illegally and collusively boycott Tesla, one of the world's great automakers and Elon's quote-unquote baby, in order to attack and do harm to Elon and everything he stands for. They tried to do it to me at the 2024 presidential ballot box, but how did that work out? In any event, I'm going to buy a brand new Tesla tomorrow morning as a show of confidence and support for Elon Musk, a truly great American. Why should he be punished for putting his tremendous skills to work in order to help make America great again? And hey, I'm with you, President Trump. He's just trying to make America great again. Or so it seems right now, and maybe later on we'll find out that's not true, but hopefully it is true, you know? We'll give him the benefit of the doubt for now. At least that is my current policy, and it is open to changing at absolutely any moment. And you always got to watch the other side as well because, hey, anything can happen. Now, I found this article in the Financial Times this morning quite interesting. The Financial Times, as I often remind, is one of the mouthpieces of this global regime. It is how they speak to their own. This is by elites for elites. And this is one of their writers, Edward Luce, who I mentioned last week. He is a frequent guest of MSNBC. And he wrote an article this morning called Elon Musk's Self-Destruction. Apparently, the world's richest man is just about to self-destruct. And maybe his rocket will in the sky. And we will have the Challenger story all over again. And if that happens, and obviously I don't want anything bad to happen, but also Challenger story, PSYOP. If that happens, I would suspect that we will get the disclosure on the Challenger op, which would be world-changing, potentially. Gosh, I really hope no one gets hurt, okay? A rocket blowing up in the sky does not mean people were hurt. When we say, oh, those poor astronauts, just wait, okay? Just wait. And if you're not on board with the Challenger disaster conspiracy theory, which you should be if you're a thinking person, but if you're not on board with that, then you just wait, and we'll see what happens. But let's go through a bit of this article. When Elon Musk said he loved Donald Trump, quote, as much as a straight man can love another, end quote, the emetic effect was widespread. Maybe that's memetic, I don't know. Trump is one of the few people left in Washington, D.C. who likes having Musk around. Well, the good thing is we don't care about the opinions of anyone in Washington, D.C. Yes, if you're just a normal American living there, fine. And I'm not talking about the D.C. suburbs. I know that there are plenty of good people living there. Not all Washington, D.C. residents, okay? Hashtag. That covers my bases. Yet, having given Musk more power than any private figure in U.S. history, the president is watching his benefactor turn into an albatross. Oh, yes, Trump needed him so desperately to win a fake election. The question is how Trump will get rid of Musk, not whether. Really? Donald Trump has done nothing but support Elon Musk this week. And here we have it. The price of having him as co-helmsman is already steep. The New York Times chronicled how Trump clipped Musk's wings in a heated cabinet meeting last week. And Trump and Musk disavowed all the claims in that article and said, hey, that's fake news. Do we take the fake news at their word when Trump's saying, hey, that's fake news? Let's be realistic. That doesn't make any sense at all. Cabinet heads, he's still going with it, though. Luce is, doesn't mention Trump's denials. If I recall, I read this morning. Cabinet heads, rather than Musk's so-called Department of Government Efficiency would take care of their own hiring and firing. So they wanted to take back their authority. They thought Elon Musk was overstepping his bounds by being the firer-in-chief, apparently. And so they had some sort of spat in this cabinet meeting, and then Trump sided with his cabinet and said, okay, guys, you can do the hiring and firing that I direct you to do while I listen to Elon, but whatever. His White House had until then been notably leak-free, in contrast to his first term. So there were leaks from the cabinet meeting, and that's why this story is valid in the minds of people like Edward Luce, also because it is absolutely necessary for his agenda and his story. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. It matters if they need this critical piece of information to be true to build the rest of the story. And they do, so they're pretending it's true, even though it's been totally disavowed. But it appears senior staff are keen to see the back of the chainsaw-wielding oligarch. The showdown has been set up with the aim of hastening that day. So the showdown was set up with the goal of moving Elon Musk out of the administration as fast as possible. And he goes on. And again, all of this is just false reality, otherworldly nonsense. Luce is apparently just making claims up at this point. He says later on, there appears to be nothing Musk will not say to defame those in his way. This has been apparent since he accused a beleaguered caver of being a pedophile a few weeks ago. Musk is only acting more like himself, but his willingness to character assassinate is interfering with Rubio's job. Musk recently threatened to trigger a collapse in Ukraine's front line by pulling his Starlink satellite service. And again, that story was completely disavowed and denied by Elon Musk. He made it quite clear that Starlink is the only thing keeping Ukraine from collapsing, but he did not at any point threaten to pull away that Starlink service, and he can't. Again, this is false reality, right? We're understanding Elon Musk not as a defense contractor in coordination with the actual legitimate layer of government and the military, because Elon Musk was defying the Joe Biden fake presidential agenda vis-a-vis the war in Ukraine in 2023. Okay? We don't have to believe this nonsense now. He's just not working for their team. And so whatever they say is fine. We went through these claims on Monday, and Luce keeps going as though they were true. After Poland's foreign minister, Radoslaw Sikorski, who is in the false reality layer of Polish government, as we talked about on Monday, Musk posted, "Be quiet, small man. There's no substitute for Starlink." Poland is one of the few European countries Trump has said he would aid in the event of an attack. And impotent Rubio felt obliged to back up Musk. It's also because Musk was telling the truth and Luce is misrepresenting him. Poland has an actual president, Duda, not the prime minister, Tusk. And Trump is an ally of Duda. So, of course, he's going to come to their rescue because the only people that might attack Poland are from the regime, not from Russia. So their status as a NATO Article 5 country is irrelevant in this situation. Now it gets interesting, even more interesting. I think the whole thing's interesting. But the cost of keeping him by Trump's side is growing. In ignorance of how the federal government works, Musk is only causing damage. Oh, yes, he just doesn't get it. Like the Brit, Edward Luce, does. This also undercuts Russell Vought, head of the White House Office of Management and Budget, who has spent years drawing up plans to deconstruct the administrative state. He was co-author of Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation's radical blueprint for a second Trump term. The traumatizing of America's civil service will outlast Musk, but Vought is likely to do it less incompetently. yeah, Musk just doesn't understand what he's doing. The narrative layer, of course. Vogt is going to actually have to do it. And I like Russ Vogt. I have no problem with Russ Vogt whatsoever. But looking at this both ways, you got to kind of wonder, is Russ Vogt, guest of the Tucker Carlson Shillfest, the narrative layer, the scripted narrative layer for how to dismantle the federal government, not on behalf of Donald Trump, but on behalf of that tech libertarian side of the Great Reset agenda, as we discussed on Monday. Nor does he share Musk's seeming reluctance to go after the Pentagon, which is a major source of Musk's federal contracts. And of course, Donald Trump isn't going after the Pentagon either, so that might be the explanation. But no, it's Elon Musk's pocketbook, because all of this is about Elon Musk making money. He actually hints right here that Elon Musk's son X was why Donald Trump had the desk in the Oval Office replaced, not because it was bugged somehow, but because Elon Musk's 4-year-old wiped his boogers on it. Okay? And Luce suggests that Musk keep X away from the White House. Well, he took him there yesterday. Apparently, Luce didn't realize that. And let's close this out because it's China-Taiwan stuff, and that's always interesting. There's also Musk's impact on Trump's China policy. As clients in the U.S., Europe, and elsewhere spurn Tesla and search for alternatives to SpaceX, Musk's commercial reliance on China is growing. No, it isn't. Okay? And the story about people going after Tesla and hating Tesla and blah, 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 irrelevant. The market losses, irrelevant. All of that stuff is irrelevant. Musk's dovish influence on China policy is plain. Trump now sounds almost as uninterested in Taiwan's fate as he is in Ukraine's. Most of the rest of his team are China hawks. If and when Trump turns against China, there will be another sign of Musk's dissent. And no, there won't be. And we've talked about what the China policy will eventually be, just as we talked about what the Russia policy was going to be. Now we can see that's clear. And the same is true for Saudi Arabia and North Korea. And it's going to be true for Venezuela too. Base dictator is going to be hilarious when that all finally comes down. So if Elon Musk stays on that side, they're going to point to it and say those are Elon Musk's financial interests at play. That's why he's going against the hawks and neocons in the false reality layer of Trump's administration. And will that be true? No, it won't. But it'll need to be true for people like Edward Luce, because he's going to have to be on the same side as the neocons and warhawks, because they're not going to want to actually admit the existence of the uniparty and the interests of the global regime aligned with that uniparty, which includes many on the uniparty right, all of these Republicans, and of course, the fantasy team. Not all fantasy team. Hashtag not all fantasy team. Okay? There are probably some good ones in there, and maybe we'll come across one or two of them by the time this here episode ends, but I kind of doubt it because there's no reason to expect that any of them are actually good. They might be good, but there's just no reason to expect it. Now, MSNBC was a little upset, or maybe they were upset by Trump's reaction to the Tesla protests, but let's go ahead and hear it from the horses.
Have this post claiming that protests at Tesla dealerships are illegal. He said today he would label violence against dealerships domestic terrorism. Now, you know I am judicious in how I play this sound, but I think you need to hear it from him.
Mr. President talks about some of the violence that's been going on around the country at dealerships. Some say they should be labeled domestic terrorists.
I will do that. I'll do it. I'm going to stop them. We catch anybody doing it because they're harming a great American company. Let me tell you, you do it to Tesla and you do it to any company, we're going to catch you and you're going to go through hell.
So just to be clear, You protest a private company, you are labeled by this administration a domestic terrorist.
What you are seeing now, these images came and come in stark contrast to what we saw over the course of the daytime hours in Kenosha and into the early evening, which were largely peaceful demonstrations in the face of law enforcement.
Yes, very peaceful protests. I don't know who made that little compilation there, but MSNBC is very triggered. Apparently, smashing cars and setting things on fire is once again peaceful protest. And if that is shut down in any way, then that is a violation of the First Amendment, people's right to assemble and express their grievances against the government. Censoring people like myself, that's not a big deal. But making it so that people who are part of paid protest movements by color revolutionists who are committing actual acts of violence, that's just good, peaceful protest. Now, speaking of censorship for people like myself, I want to put this in here somewhere. How about this? None other than Jack Dorsey got locked out of X, formerly Twitter, today. 12-hour lockout for Jack. And I suppose that he probably had to delete some kind of post. I don't know what that post is, but it's hard to be upset about this. I was banned from the Twitter platform for 2 years during Jack Dorsey's reign. And then when I came back after Jack Dorsey's reign, I was suspended probably 10 to 12 times in the course of 15 months for using the word retarded, which is now all over Twitter and basically said by everyone, hey, world, you're welcome. It was not allowed to be used at the time, which is one of the things that made it so effective. If you know that the other side, people in the party of false decorum, cannot use certain words, certain expressions, certain tactics, various elements of the truth out there in the world, if they have to ignore those, you can use them against them all the time. It's just free shots all day long because they can't come back against it. It's just wonderful. It's so much fun. And at the same time you're mocking them, you get to remind them over and over again, hey, retard, you're not allowed to say that. So I was suspended numerous times. Then I finally deactivated my account because I wasn't allowed to take subscriptions. I wasn't allowed to have my posts monetized, no matter how popular they got. I was treated as a second-class citizen. My posts were, what do they call it? Like deboosted, shadow banned. And so I finally left, deactivated my account. And then about 6 months later, Twitter allowed my account to be accessed, taken over, wiped completely. And now they say I cannot verify that I was the original account owner, despite the fact that I paid for Twitter premium services and have the purchase receipts and have the emails from when I set up the account and the rest of it. So do I feel bad for Jack Dorsey being locked out of his account for 12 hours? No, I do not. Twitter has always been a censored space. It has never been a free speech platform, much less the one lone bastion of free speech that remains in the world. It is a platform where retards consume psyops. It is the intellectual kids table. You cannot have an intelligent platform for free speech and conversation about ideas that are less than fully socially acceptable in a censored space. If you're in a censored space, you're only getting part of the conversation by definition. Therefore, anything valuable that is outside that censored space cannot be analyzed within the censored space. It gets ignored. And then, so the people within the censored space don't feel retarded, they pretend whatever's outside isn't relevant, isn't valid, and isn't true, further retarding themselves. That is the intellectual kids table problem in microcosm. Let us get back to Trump and Elon. Elon visited the White House yesterday to bring Donald Trump a Tesla, one of the Teslas that he said he would buy. Here we are.
President Trump, are you looking to buy or lease today?
Well, I'm going to buy, and I'm going to buy because, number one, it's a great product, as good as it gets, and number two, because this man has devoted his energy and his life to doing this. I think he's been treated very unfairly by a very small group of people. And I just want people to know that you can't be penalized for being a patriot. And he's a great patriot. And he's also done an incredible job with Tesla. And I mean, nobody else has a car company started up in the last 30 years that's been successful. I don't think so. And not only successful, but super successful. And because he's able to find billions and billions and billions of dollars of fraud and waste and all of the things. I mean, our country is going to be very strong very soon because of a lot of the things that he's done and a lot of the things that I'm doing. And there's no better team, but there's no better for what we're doing. There's nobody like this, and he shouldn't be penalized. And when I watched the other day, I said, I can't believe it. It should be the opposite. People should be going wild, and they love the product, but because he's finding all sorts of terrible things that have taken place against our country, they want to penalize him in an economic sense. And I just think that's very unfair. So I just wanted to make a statement. I'm going to buy one. Now, here's the bad news. I'm not allowed to drive because I haven't driven a car in a long time, and I love to drive cars. But I'm going to have it at the White House, and I'm going to let my staff use it. I'm going to let people at the place use it. And they all are all excited about that. I'm not allowed to use it. Can you believe it? One of my great things in life is that I can, I like to drive cars, but I'm not allowed to.
Terrible. How are they going to take away Donald Trump's right to drive cars? Another clip from Trump and Elon yesterday. If I can find it. Wow. Oh, here it is. It arranges my stuff sometimes by dates. So if it's from yesterday or the day before, it like hides it.
What I'm doing, but the results are going to be 20 times greater. Mr. President, and remember, Trump is always right.
And what do you say to Americans?
You look at what I've said over the last 10 years. Trump has been right all the time. This is the way to do it. We're going to make America great again. To make it great, you have to have jobs, you have to have factories, you have to have. I look at some of the things that, like this last administration. He was the worst president in the history of our country. Nothing was happening. Nothing. He had no idea what was going on. Our country went to hell. And then to allow millions of people to come in that are prisoners and mental institution patients, all of the things, gang members, drug lords, we're searching them all down now, trying to get them out of our country. And we're going to.
And I expect that he will be able to do that. Hold on for 1 second. I think that I can find one more rather hilarious clip from yesterday. Gosh. I really do think this will be worth it if I can snag it. Yes, here we are. We're almost there, I promise. Hold for processing just one more moment. Okay. One more Trump clip from yesterday. And this has kind of become its own Trump meme. Trump memes are hilarious. Trump memes are never really like J.D. Vance memes. The left tries memes like that on Trump, but they have no sense of humor. And everybody loves Trump, so it never works.
That's beautiful. This is a different panel than I've had. Everything's computer. That's beautiful. Wow.
Yeah, it's just a break and an accelerator. You're good.
That's beautiful.
Can you start it?
Should I?
So you want action, right?
We can let that clip go. Everything is computer. The statement "everything is computer" has become a thing, and I'm pretty happy it's become a thing. Saw this meme today. Sorry, but it's the couple in bed together. The man is rolled over, looks totally distraught, and the wife is turning over her shoulder to see what's wrong. She's thinking, I bet he's thinking about other women, but he's thinking everything is computer. So they were talking about how there's in the Tesla Cyber cab, no steering wheel, no pedals, just drives itself. You don't need a cab driver. Many dystopian movies have presented an idea very similar to that. It's becoming our reality. Maybe it's a good reality. And the question is, do you trust Tesla self-driving the computer, or do you trust the driver of a Lyft or Uber you'll get in the car with, or even just a friend of yours? It's a tough call. I don't know what the right answer is. I have ridden in some cars with some friends who are very bad drivers. I've ridden in cabs in busy cities. Is the self-driving car, is the computer better at it? I don't know. Donald Trump from yesterday, Truth Social is apparently back in business for now. Wow. People are loving Elon, a great patriot. Nice to see, DJT. So it does not sound like Trump is getting close to getting rid of Elon, despite what Edward Luce might say. Now, I saw in the chat over on Rumble that there was a Rumble rant from Polymath Anon, who says, have to get at least one Anna Paulina Luna in here somewhere. Sorry for the interruption, folks. Laughter is necessary to sanity. And I would agree with you. There will never be enough of those. Let us continue to more serious matters. This is Badlands Media from yesterday. DOJ argues states have, quote, no hope of success, end quote, in lawsuit over federal worker firings. The Department of Justice contends that 20 state attorneys general suing the Trump administration over mass federal worker firings have no hope of success, arguing in a Monday court filing that states have no authority to interfere in government employment matters. The states cannot circumvent that channeling scheme by asserting downstream harm from those employment actions, the DOJ stated in an opposition filing on behalf of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Department of Education, and other federal agencies. The lawsuit, brought by states including Washington, D.C., and Maryland, challenges the administration's handling of terminations affecting federal employees across the country. DOJ attorneys urged U.S. District Judge James Bradar to reject a motion for a temporary restraining order that would halt the USDA from terminating probationary employees without individualized assessments of performance and compliance with reduction in force procedures. The states are also seeking to reinstate workers they claim were unlawfully fired and require the USDA to submit ongoing status reports on compliance, and it goes on. So the idea here is that they're going to throw a wrench in the gears and make it impossible for the Trump administration to remove executive branch agency employees because somehow the president, as the full plenary authority of everything that happens in the executive branch, shouldn't be allowed to fire these people. Another claim that I just heard surface today, though not in this article, was that these employees, in some cases, just had performance reviews that were positive weeks ago, right before the fake and illegitimate Biden administration left, their directors or whatever members of those agencies said, hey, Ted is doing a great job. Kathy is doing a great job. And because of those performance reviews, Donald Trump shouldn't be allowed to fire them for whatever inefficiency he might describe. Look at that. They are excellent performers. They are wonderful employees according to their higher-ups. Therefore, he's not allowed to fire them for this reason. Did they do that preemptively and submit all those performance reviews for exactly this reason? You would have to think so. It would be crazy to think otherwise. Should that matter? Absolutely, of course not. Donald Trump, as the executive, should be able to fire any member of the executive branch at will at any time, and that should be a known standard of employment. If you don't want to deal with that, don't go work in the federal government. And if it turns out that virtually no one wants to work in and for the federal government, well, then I guess we don't have a federal government anymore. These are not problems. These are solutions. Go ahead, commies, stop liking it and get out. Simple. If you want to work for the federal government, you should go into your job as a public servant. I am here to do a job on behalf of the public, directed by the president, whoever that president might be. That's the job. The president can fire you if you do a bad job. If you are part of a slow-moving bureaucratic coup against a duly elected president with an overwhelming mandate from the people to reduce the size and scope of the government, and you're not doing that. I got too far afield. If you are running a coup against the president, that president should be able to fire you. If the conditions are set up such that the president cannot fire you, then what we have is a fully supported ability, I guess. I can't think of a better word right now for that, to run coups against a duly elected president. That's insane. That's untenable. The only reason it ever worked before was because we had commies in office. Now, last week, Donald Trump signed an executive order revoking security clearances and a series of other actions against the law firm Perkins Coie, the law firm that represented the Hillary Clinton for president campaign in 2016. Mark Elias, the Democrat lawfare attorney, was a partner at Perkins Coie at that point, and Perkins Coie was involved not only in the Steele dossier, but the Rushgate hoax in general. And so Donald Trump has gone after them. Mark Elias himself is one of the defendants in Donald Trump's Rico Grande case. They filed a lawsuit yesterday, and I just want to go through a bit of that from the introduction to this lawsuit. It's a fairly good summary of their claims. Because the order, in effect, adjudicates and punishes alleged misconduct by Perkins Coie, it's an unconstitutional violation of the separation of powers, because it does so without notice and an opportunity to be heard, and because it punishes the entire firm for the purported misconduct of a handful of lawyers who are not employees of the firm. It is an unconstitutional violation of procedural due process and of the substantive due process right to practice one's professional livelihood. Because the order singles out Perkins Coie, it denies the firm the equal protection of the laws guaranteed by the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment. Because the order punishes the firm for the clients with which it has been associated and the legal positions it has taken on matters of election law the order constitutes retaliatory viewpoint discrimination and therefore violates the First Amendment rights of free expression and association and the right to petition the government for redress. Because the order compels disclosure of confidential information revealing the firm's relationships with its clients, it violates the First Amendment. Because the order retaliates against Perkins Coie for its diversity-related speech, it violates the First Amendment. Because the order is vague in prescribing what is prohibited, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it violates the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment. Because the order works to brand Perkins Coie as persona non grata and bar it from federal buildings, deny it the ability to communicate with federal employees, and terminate the government contracts of its clients, the order violates the right to counsel afforded by the Fifth and Sixth Amendments. So apparently, Perkins Coie wants to retain the right to wage coups against the duly elected president and to influence political campaigns and elections just out of its ability to exercise its First Amendment and Fifth Amendment, primarily, rights. That's quite a case they made. Now, today, we get this. Hold for processing just for a moment. This is ABC News. Judge blocks parts of Trump executive order that targeted Perkins Coie law firm. A federal judge on Wednesday entered an emergency order barring the Trump administration from implementing major parts of its executive order that sought to target the law firm Perkins Coie over its representation of Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016. District Judge Beryl Howell, ruling from the bench, found that attorneys for Perkins Coie had met the bar for her to enter a temporary restraining order, determining they would suffer immediate and irreparable harm if provisions of the order targeting the law firm's work with contractors, as well as restrictions on their attorneys' access to government buildings were implemented. In an extraordinary hearing in which the Justice Department put forward Attorney General Pam Bondi's Chief of Staff, Chad Mazzell, to present its arguments, Howell repeatedly questioned the logic and legality surrounding the order, which she said had extraordinary breadth and whose language was unlike any other order she'd ever read. Regardless of whether the president dislikes the firm's clients, issuing an executive order targeting the firm based on the president's dislike of the political positions of the firm's clients or the firm's litigation positions is retaliatory and runs head-on into the wall of First Amendment protection, Howell said. Now, there were quite a few attorneys who were pursued under the fake and illegitimate Biden administration and its similarly fake and illegitimate Department of Justice. But we are to ignore those, of course, because now the tables have turned, and we should remember we are operating in the regime's legal system. It just is how it is, okay? This is not a constitutional legal system. This is British common law run by the bar attorneys and prosecuted in courts that should not exist, generally speaking. Not all of them, but most of them. Not all courts, hashtag. Bloomberg Law. Judge blocks Trump order targeting Perkins Coie and clients. In this article, it notes in particular, Howell granted an injunction halting sections of the executive order. Perkins Coie didn't challenge other parts of Trump's order, directing agency heads to suspend security clearances for the firm's lawyers and investigate industry-leading law firms for racially discriminatory practices. So Trump can still bar their access to privileged classified information, national security information, etc., but the rest of it is being stopped or large parts of it are being stopped. And we will see how that progresses. Again, these court decisions that don't go our way may well expose corruption in the judicial system from people like Beryl Howell, who have come up countless times over the past few years. There are other law firms that Trump has gone after. This case focuses only on Perkins Coie. We will see what happens. These things can be appealed, and when they are appealed, occasionally, if they get all the way up to the Supreme Court, we get the lines painted on the field. We want to know what the rules are. Let's get them all out there in the public. The regime can argue its side of the case, get the rules put in place, and then let's play by those rules. I have no doubt that we will still win. And again, let's just be realistic. It seems like the military is on Donald Trump's side. Not too much happened that would have been in the favor of the fake and illegitimate Biden regime at any point vis-a-vis the military. And here is Donald Trump. We don't have real elections. We don't have a real Congress or a real Senate. We have a fake and illegitimate bureaucratic administrative deep state still in place, now stocked by Donald Trump, assigned individuals. We'll see how they operate, see how they do. And we have the dismantling of that administrative state by the Great Reset side as well as the Trump side. So all of those things can still be happening. And we are very likely still under some form of military government. The only legitimate government, member of the government, as far as I can tell, is the Commander-in-Chief, Donald J. Trump, who is there by the full and overwhelming mandate of the American people, which is the only thing that matters in all law everywhere, including in international law and all political philosophy spanning time up until recently, when the regime actually had to go ahead and create other standards of legitimacy once people began realizing, hey, you replaced our Constitution after usurping our government and overthrowing our government in a violent, subversive coup or color revolution. We don't like that. And hey, you're stealing our elections. So, once people found out that those things were true, then they had to change the standards to, do they provide a stable form of government and services to the people, which is just communism. Communism would meet that qualification even after a government overthrow. Checking the chat just briefly here. Glad you guys are having fun. I'm glad we still have a couple hundred people in the Rumble Premium chat. Good to see. Beachbound just said, Chris should have 100,000 listening if they only knew what they were missing. Well, been doing this nonstop for nearly a full 5 years now. Next month, or the end of this month, I don't remember when it was, will be 5 full years. And that is still not possible due to censorship. And maybe one day it will be. The truth is, I don't care. I just want there to be a record created of these things being said so that people in the future or at any point can look back and understand, oh, you know what? Actually, these things were visible at the time. This person or these people were saying those things. So we actually don't have to believe the bullshit that the fake news is saying, the bullshit that the fantasy team is saying. We can actually just trace back the record of these conversations being had so that people actually observed the reality over that same time. And then we do not need the false reality explanations for any of the phenomena that we have seen emerge into reality or into the narrative layer of reality over the last 5 years. That's what this show's for. If the followers or the money ever comes in the future, fine, I don't care. This is the purpose, okay? Laying down the record for the future is the purpose. Now, at some point for that record to be something meaningful, it will require people actually needing to know about it and look for it. But I can't control that. All I can control is whether or not the record has been laid down. So we are laying it down. Now, the way that this court decision is being presented broadly in the media and on Twitter is that this court has gone above and beyond to usurp the legitimate power of Donald Trump as the duly elected president and his ability to oversee things like security clearances. In fact, Trump advisor, longtime advisor, and attorney for America First Legal over the last 4 years, Stephen Miller, said lawless judicial tyranny, judges have no authority to force the executive branch to provide classified secrets to Democrat activist law firms. And the problem with the situation as it exists is there are these Washington law firms operating in the regime, legal, and judicial system. Any national security issue, anything involving classified information, and we have an overclassification problem, also a product of the regime and its system and its desire to protect information it simply doesn't want out there, to punish people and bar their access from that information, to make it so the public can't get access to the information the government possesses, despite it supposedly being a government of, by, and for the people. So we have the over-declassification problem. We have the regime NatSec community and intelligence community. We have the regime-oriented law firms. We have the regime legal and judicial system in place. And so what you have is a closed circuit that can protect all of that information and utilize that information. And then people without security clearances who aren't allowed to view classified information, well, they can't be involved in any of those cases. So how are you going to actually prosecute any of the regime officials involved in any sort of corruption, criminality, malfeasance, etc., when they have a closed system operating at every level? And so we should be able to now see the illustration of this system in full, which is critical if we want to actually tear down that system and replace it with a legitimate system of justice, the one our founders intended, or many of them intended, which was trial by jury, which means that the people on the jury are not only deciding the guilt or innocence of the person in front of them, they are also deciding the legitimacy of the law that the person is said to have violated. So if you had 12 normal Americans dealing with most of the laws our government prosecutes other Americans for violating, and you ask them, hey, does that law sound valid to you? The people could then just go, nah, that law sounds like bullshit. And that's not only the innocence of the person on trial, that's the nullification of the law, because those 12 people on the jury are meant to represent the people because they are drawn from the people, an actual jury of the people's peers. That's all it would take to nullify these laws, which is why when people are like, well, we need to change it through the system, we need to do this, that, blah, blah, blah. You can't say the government's illegitimate. You can't go against the court's decisions, blah, blah, blah. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. That is exactly the system that we were meant to have. And if you want to hear these arguments made at great length, you can read Lysander Spooner's Trial by Jury. You can go back to the writings of the Anti-Federalists and some of the other founders. You can go listen to the, Path to Liberty podcast from the 10th Amendment Center, Michael Bolden, and hear all about what they actually thought of the process of nullification. You don't need a court to agree with the written letter of the Constitution. If a court doesn't agree with the written letter of the Constitution, it's not that the Constitution is changed according to the opinion of the court. It's that the court is nullified. It's the law of the land. But we don't care about those things anymore. We do not care about those things anymore. The people do not understand their own power to speak out against their government as we were commanded to do by Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence. Our founders said it was our right and our duty to throw off exactly a government like this. Someone actually attempted to make the argument to me today on Truth Social that because this is not our illegitimate government, then their violations of our rights, our constitutional rights, our natural rights, our human rights, it's not the government violating those rights. Man, that is around the bend, but I guess there might be some point in there somewhere. Don't know what to do about that. I'll have to ponder that at much greater length. Let us move forward to one Thomas Massie. And as we begin, it is important to remember that Thomas Massie was one of the most outspoken DeeSantis simps, along with Chip Roy. Thomas Massie was also a part of the DeeSantis Simp op on Twitter, okay? And I would submit to you that there is not a person on the planet, except for the people involved in the op potentially, who understand that op better than I do, okay? I tracked it through the entire time. I dealt with these people day and night. I went after them nonstop for the full 15 months. Well, no, not the full 15 months. I guess it would have been 13 months because the DeeSantis Simp op it was hard to publicly acknowledge it prior to Donald Trump just whispering DeSanctimonious and then all of them absolutely losing their shit forever. Okay. So let's say from that point on, 13 months, I tracked that op all the time. I'm pretty certain I came up with DeeSantis Simps and started calling them that, though that became a widespread internet phenomenon, much as the resurgence of retard, exactly as you sound vaccinated. But, you know, the rest of the internet probably thought of it. So Thomas Massie, DeeSantis Simp, in that DeeSantis Simp op, there were 30 or 50, there were probably 10 or 15 central characters. And those characters were part of that op. They displayed it on Instagram from the beginning of 2022 because there was no point at which Ron DeSantis was not running for president in the fake primary, even while he was running for re-election as governor of Florida. He just couldn't announce the president thing until after he got re-elected governor of Florida. And I'll do the quickest version of this that I can. But when we're talking about one script running full time while Trump is drafting onto that script, layering onto it, presenting problems for that script, Ron DeSantis is the pinnacle of that, okay? Ron DeSantis was supposed to be in Congress playing the Marjorie Taylor Greene role, speaking out against COVID throughout the very deadly pandemic from his position as congressman. Except Trump pulled him out of that and instead put him in as Florida governor. Won Ron DeSantis the primary, the Republican primary down in the Florida governor race in 2018, and then won him his position as Florida governor. Okay. In 2022, Ron DeSantis faced Charlie Crist, a former governor of Florida who used to be a Republican. Now he's a Democrat or an independent or whatever he is, but he was just a ringer character, much like Terry McAuliffe was in the 2021 gubernatorial election in Virginia that Glenn Youngkin won in a fake election decided by 51-49, the Dominion score, as I called before that election. The purpose of that election was to convince Republicans, hey, if we just go anti-woke and get Scott Presler out there, we can still win these elections. The election system is not the problem. It's that we just needed to mobilize properly. So Glenn Youngkin beats a ringer, then Ron beats a ringer. Now, the summer of 2022 was when Andrew Gillum was exposed. Andrew Gillum, who would have been the governor in 2018, Ron beat Andrew Gillum, and Brian Kemp beat Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams and Andrew Gillum were their candidates of color who the Democrats were going to have win these massive red states. Andrew Gillum would have been the governor through COVID, not Ron DeSantis. Andrew Gillum would have shut down Florida during COVID, just as Ron DeSantis did. Andrew Gillum would have pushed the COVID vaccines, just as Ron DeSantis did. And then Andrew Gillum would have been totally destroyed in the 2022 gubernatorial race because of the pictures of him passed out in a hotel room with a gay escort and crack all around him. Okay? So Ron DeSantis would have then become governor. He would have been America's governor, as we were told he was, and he would have ridden that into the presidential primary. Fox News loved Ron DeSantis. He had the whole Con Inc. establishment behind him. He also had the Ron DeSantis Simp op set up in January 2022, well paid, all of them pure neocons who are sometimes Trump, and just coincidentally, all Zionists. Huge Israel simps, in addition to being Ron DeSantis simps. Which brings us back around to the Ron DeSantis op, okay? So they had those key people in there, a wider group of Twitter influencers who kind of glommed on immediately and then were brought into the fold. And I'm talking about like Town Hall, Kurt Schlichter. By the way, Mike Davis, Article 3, who everybody assumes is MAGA as hell, his partner at Article 3, Will Chamberlain, DeSantis simp. Okay? Josh Hammer, editor of Newsweek, DeSantis simp. All sorts of these people. All of the Daily Weimar, all of the Blaze. What was his name? The little softball-shaped Cabbage Patch Kid-looking guy. Steve Deace. Remember when they all launched Ron DeSantis' campaign on a Twitter space hosted by Elon Musk and David Sachs, Trump's crypto czar? Remember that? Oh, and it crashed right at the beginning. Crazy, huh? So beyond those circles that they had in the DeSantis simp op, they also had numerous Twitter bots. They had a bot army. In fact, I'm not certain, can't prove it, but pretty sure that it was the same op that ran the NAFO thing, the pro-Ukraine op, where all they did was harass the hell out of anybody who wasn't pro-Ukraine. And they brought the same tactics. And of course, I did this for 15 months. So they use those same things against me all the time. They tried all the different things. They make themselves sound like tough guys. So you should be scared and intimidated. Then they go through just degenerate sexual talk. And if you keep blasting them back harder, they don't have any way to respond. You tell them they sound vaccinated. There's no argument against that because they were. And they couldn't speak out against the vaccine because they were supporting the regime, because Ron was supporting the regime. Ron's people in the DeSantis simp op never spoke out against the vaccine. In fact, most of them took it. Okay. So you use things that they can't use. Tell them they sound vaccinated. Call them retarded. Be like, hey, why are you speaking like such a gay degenerate? Right? All sorts of gay stuff. They were saying, hey, man, whatever you want to do, right? It's your life. Not that there's anything wrong with that, even though there kind of is. It's just, extreme fornication. Use those tactics against them. They can't respond because they are contained inside the bubble of the party of false decorum. One of my friends today was worried about posting a piece of content on Twitter, and I'll share that piece of content a little later on, because all of those same people within the party of false decorum were going to wonder, hey, what are you doing sharing that content? Are you pro all these dictators? And you'll see it in a bit. Fantastic content. They can't use any of those tactics. And so you can spot the bot armies in those ways, which is why I use those tactics. And people are like, why do you keep using the same things? I'm tired of seeing this. Cool. Then unfollow me. I am doing something more important. I don't care about entertaining you online. I'm glad that I do at times whenever I do, but I'm trying to figure out who these people are and what they're trying to do. And I think that that was very successful. Now, the thing is, that Twitter bot army, those characters with like 50 followers, no one following them, no posts other than replies harassing those people that are threatening the Ron op or the Ukraine op or the Israel op, etc., were still followed by Thomas Massie, Harmeet Dillon, Chip Roy, and all the other DeeSantis Simps, which meant they're either just sock accounts or a bot army directed by those people, which meant their interactions were how that bot army was targeting posts on Twitter. You can watch it happen. I did watch it happen. And that is exactly the sort of information operation that people like me were dealing with constantly for the years on Twitter. It's less prevalent on Truth Social. It's Telegram, but it's not nothing. On Twitter, it happens all the time. And that is how they shift entire cultural narratives. They have overthrown countries with those tactics. Those were the tactics developed that Mike Benz actually talks about quite a lot, that they used for the Arab Spring and overthrows of other countries. It's part of the color revolution. Why were parts of the color revolution operating on behalf of Ronald DeSantis? Isn't that strange? Not to me, because the regime is the regime. The uniparty right is part of the regime. That's all it is. And Thomas Massie was a big part of it. Okay, let me take a breath, sip of water, and we will get right back to Thomas Massie. All right. So this is Donald Trump from Monday. And remember, we were in the budget, the continuing resolution process this week. They are hoping to avoid a government shutdown that will come on Friday if they're not able to get this spending bill passed. Donald Trump has been supporting it while making it impossible. Okay? The laser pointer all over the place. You can't get Trump, no matter what. I wish I still had the cat video up. I would play it. Just going to have to wait till later. Or never, Who knows? So Trump said, thank you to the House Freedom Caucus. Many of them were DeSantis supporters, by the way, or very weak Trump supporters, and still part of that op. I am pretty certain about that. Although I know Q people think the House Freedom Caucus, because the words exist in Q posts, well, they all must be good, and therefore Ron DeSantis is good. I think that is absolute madness. But, hey, maybe they're right. Thank you to the House Freedom Caucus for just delivering a big blow to the radical left Democrats and their desire to raise taxes and shut our country down, he says in all caps. Shut our country down, ! In all caps. But people are like, why don't you trust Trump? He's saying we can't shut the country down. Okay, well, right there, he said in all caps, shut our country down. They hate America and all it stands for. That's why they allowed millions of criminals to invade our nation. Sometimes it takes great courage to do the right thing. Congressman Thomas Massie of beautiful Kentucky is an automatic no vote on just about everything, despite the fact that he has always voted for continuing resolutions in the past. He should be primary, Trump says, and I will lead the charge against him. He is just another grandstander, in all caps, who's too much trouble and not worth the fight. He reminds me of Liz Cheney, spelled with an A, before her historic record-breaking fall, in parentheses, loss, ! The people of Kentucky won't stand for it. Just watch. Do I have any takers? He says in all caps. Anyway, thank you again for the House Freedom Caucus, for your very important vote. We need to buy some time in order to make America great again, greater than ever before, in all caps, unite and win. Okay? So shut our country down, he said in all caps. He labels Thomas Massie the problem and says that Thomas Massie and these no votes is going to lead to Thomas Massie being primary. Well, our elections are fake. And more than our general elections being fake, our primaries are particularly fake. The primaries are the fakest of the fake. And of course, Donald Trump knows that. So a threat to primary is meaningless. Now, could Donald Trump make sure that Thomas Massie is not the candidate in the reelection for his seat in Congress? Well, yes, he could. But the rumor out there is also that Thomas Massie is gunning for Mitch McConnell's seat in the Senate. So the Congress seat wouldn't matter. Trump could also take care of the Senate seat. And all of this will probably be irrelevant by the time that comes around. Scott Jennings of CNN, who is being made famous on Twitter and on the television, is expected to contend for that Senate seat. They're going to draft him from the television and probably install him there, or at least in the race, and we shall see. And hopefully by then we will not have elections because the people will have woken up and discontinued their retardation about groveling over fake elections. Let us keep going with Donald Trump and quote-unquote Congressman Thomas Massie. That's not me saying it. That's Trump saying it, as he says right there. Congressman, in quotes, Thomas Massie voted to delay the debt ceiling bill from the Biden administration to the Trump administration from September before the election to June after the election, without getting anything for this horrendously stupid move, when Republicans could have gotten everything they wanted. He additionally voted to delay the current budget disaster from the Biden administration to the Trump administration. I was running for office at the time, doing my thing. And when I heard about this, it was quite simply hard to believe. It's like it never happened. A catastrophic mistake. By the way, Thomas Massie looks like a different person now, just saying. Now, and virtually on every other vote, he's a very simple no. He can't even approve a continuing resolution when he approved them many times during his career as a quote-unquote congressman. Thomas Massie is a grandstander. And the great people of Kentucky are going to be watching a very interesting primary in the not-too-distant future. And it's interesting because Kentucky is home of the Kentucky Derby, a very famous horse race. And I believe that the bleachers at a horse race are called the grandstands. And I'm sure someone in the chat can check me on that. Or maybe I can just operate the machine for a moment. Are the bleachers at a horse race called a grandstand? Come on, machine. Not typically, it says. Wait. Yes, so it's the bleachers or the seating that is covered by the roof area or whatever weather protection, and sometimes the VIP area. A grandstand might be present, offering more formal seating. So are those the rich seats at the horse race? And is that what he is implying about Thomas Massie, that he is the servant of the elite class in Kentucky? Now, that may well be true. I don't know. Okay. So while all of this is going, now Thomas Massie put out a video disputing Trump's claims in that post, and side wherever you want. Okay. I'm not saying Thomas Massie has no point, but that stuff is irrelevant to me. I'm not trying to call balls and strikes on Trump's Truth Social posts and narrative manipulations. We don't need to understand it on that level. That level is irrelevant. He's quote unquote congressman. Okay. The Congress and the Senate are illegitimate. The legislation they pass is meaningless, especially when it's spending to add on to a debt that is also meaningless. Okay. So I don't care about that level of analysis at all. That's all Twitter's doing. Look, I proved that Donald Trump is wrong about Thomas Massie. Who cares? Okay. Who cares? That's the only point that needs making, right? The narrative layer is the only thing that matters. Trump is manipulating the narratives. Now, it was my opinion through the vote yesterday, or I should say up until the vote, because the vote actually passed through the Congress, which is fine. They still got it through even without Thomas Massie's vote. Thomas Massie could have made it close. If that bill got shut down in the House, then fine. Thomas Massie might have looked like a hero because I want the government shut down. And I believe ultimately Trump wants the government shut down. And again, let's look at this post one more time just to have another visual on this. Believe it or don't believe it, okay? I'm not a decoder. If you want to accept this interpretation, you may. If you don't, you can reject it. Makes no difference to me. Shut our country down in all caps, he says. Okay? So if it was the case that Thomas Massie was able to cause that government shutdown, then I might think, hey, Thomas Massie, he seems kind of like a hero. That did not occur. I think it's possible Donald Trump did ask for all Republicans to vote in favor of that continuing resolution, passing it through the House, where it would almost definitely get stopped in the Senate. Okay. I guess they need 8 Democrat votes for cloture. That's what they're saying in the narrative layer. Fellow Kentuckian Rand Paul is not going to vote on behalf of this bill in the Senate. And where are we today? I was going to do this later on in the lineup, but we'll hold on to that. We'll get up to where we are today. But it seems to me that perhaps at least the process in the House that Trump wanted voted through the House is to function as a sifter and to potentially expose Thomas Massie. I was open to the possibility that it was all kayfabe, as I was told throughout the DeeSantis Simp op, while I watched these people support degenerate bot campaigns and terrible political causes. But Thomas Massie seems to just be defying what Donald Trump wants. And on the issue level, I don't care. I imagine that all of these representatives and senators know that they are illegitimately in office. And I was, my buddy CanCon is a Thomas Massie fan. I would disagree with him on that. He says that Thomas Massie is probably one of the only legitimate people in office because he ran unopposed. I would suggest that if you are running in fake elections, your lack of opposition makes no difference. The only person, again, who meets the qualifications of an overwhelming public mandate in a provable way happens to be Donald Trump. Thomas Massie did say this in favor of himself on X, formerly Twitter, yesterday. The CR isn't Trump's agenda. The CR extends the last year of Biden's agenda at substantially the same spending levels, and that's just fine because the debt doesn't matter. Thomas Massie can call himself a fiscal conservative all he likes. If he was a fiscal conservative, he shouldn't have pretended that Joe Biden won a real and legitimate election. It's that simple. But instead he did and pretended that Biden was a real legitimate president the entire time, while he was responsible for the most spending ever. It does not matter if you owe the global regime central bankers $37 trillion worth of their own fiat currency, especially when you're at war with them. Okay? If you owe the mob or the bank $100,000, that's your problem. If you owe the mob or the bank $100 million, that's their problem. Same applies with the global regime central bankers. It's especially true if you're fighting a war against them, because if you win a war against the people you owe $37 trillion to, you don't owe them $37 trillion anymore. Okay? So all of this exists on a narrative only, false reality only layer, while Donald Trump is reducing the money supply, re-onshoring dollars, and protecting the value of that dollar. We'll get more into that in just a moment. But I don't want to hear speeches about how you're fiscally conservative at this point. It's stupid. It is virtue signaling to the conservative establishment and to the normie sphere, people who have not woken up, no matter how much Fox News they want, and no matter how much they listen to all the conservative establishment, congressmen, and senators. How does it happen? The podcast sphere still says the same thing all those congressmen and senators say. How have the normies not woken up? When will someone explain it to me? Let us continue. Trump went after Massie one more time. This in the middle of the night last night. So Massie can vote for debt ceiling and budget to be put into the Trump administration, making them both the Republicans' problem and responsibility, but can't give us a simple continuing resolution vote, allowing us the time necessary to come up with a quote-unquote great, beautiful bill. Actually, it's only quote and no unquote. Republicans only, quote, no vote. And again, no unquote. Don't know what it means. Decoders can figure it out. I can't. Grandstander once again. Now, I don't know if Trump has ever... I thought I had my Trump archive link there. Let me see if I can still find it. The DJT archive. I hope this is the Twitter archive. Darn it. Let me see if I can hold for processing. I'm trying to. Darn. Trump Twitter archive. Here we are. TheTrumpArchive.com. Let me see if Trump has ever said grandstander. Wow. Hold on now. On March 27th of 2020, would you look at this? Hello. Looks like a third-rate grandstander named Representative Thomas Massie, a congressman from, unfortunately, a truly great state, Kentucky, wants to vote against the new Save Our Workers bill in Congress. He just wants the publicity. He can't stop it, only delay, which is both dangerous and, I don't know what else he would have said there. He also called Jim Pillen of Nebraska a grandstander. He also called Mitt Romney a grandstander. And he also called Brett McGurk a grandstander in his history of posts on grandstanders. But he has called Thomas Massie a grandstander before. That is very, very interesting. And at some point, I will go ahead and put that up online. If you don't see it in the next 24 hours, please do remind me and I will find it. Do we have a troll in the unlisted Rumble chat? Oh, never mind. He's just covered the multitude of posts. Just the news today. Beyond budgeting, Republicans hope to force spending showdown with two arcane weapons. And this is my good pal, Amanda Head. Already on a budgeting path to trim $2 trillion in government spending over the next decade, congressional Republicans are openly discussing employing two unconventional weapons to enact further cuts, rescission legislation and presidential impoundment. This is Representative Andy Harris of Maryland, chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. He can do it through Congress with a rescission bill. But I believe he has the power, he says, to do it through impoundment. I believe that when Congress passes an appropriation bill, it sets a ceiling. It doesn't set a concrete floor. So the president can spend up to the congressional limit, but he doesn't have to spend all that money. And that is something that we have talked about a number of times on this podcast. Russ Vogt went into it in depth on the Tucker Carlson Shillfest. Again, I like Russ Vogt. and I think hopefully he's a good guy. These are tools the president already has in the toolbox. So even if they spend all this money, Trump can still cut them off at all the passes. And the funny thing is, they might end up voting this thing through because they need all their spending priorities funded, but Trump can cut them off anyway. Another wonderful sifter to see who will go along with it. And it puts them in an impossible situation. For the people who are their donors, or the members of the regime, whoever's agenda they're implementing in Congress, they have to vote in favor of this spending. But the spending might not work, so their vote in favor of it might be for naught anyway. Because Donald Trump can simply say, yeah, well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to spend all this money, but I'm not going to. Steve Bannon runs through a bit of this today, and always, I mean, Bannon is the guy who gives the strategy of what they're doing, always. And it's so weird when people don't like him. I love him. He's my surrogate dad. He's not really my dad in any way, but I think he's a hero.
The core things happening up on Capitol Hill are monumental. Number one, it's the Senate. And President Trump, I think, boxed him in, as I said, call people's bluff. Johnson called the bluff yesterday. And this is why the House Freedom Caucus, who hates this audience hates it, I understand, for a larger goal, to hate it. And now he's got the Senate. They had a lunch yesterday and went through the strategy, and they came in there and they were kind of blank stares. They got two choices, right? They can either vote for this and let Trump fight for another day and keep the government, not have a governmental shutdown fiasco, because they can't see where they score political points because they can't see how to get out of it. Or they shut it down and they're afraid that just empowers Trump and Elon Musk and the other guys in the cabinets to say, okay, all these people are not essential. You go non-essential, essential. We're going to get rid of all the non-essentials. He's given them a terrible choice. And if they vote and they get the 8 votes they need on the Democratic side, Fetterman already said he's in, it's going to be a monumental win for President Trump. One of the biggest wins he's ever gotten on Capitol Hill.
So it sounds like they have a bigger plan at play, and that bigger plan will be executed finally in the Senate. So the House, I would look at the House at this point as a sifter. Here is the so-called Senate Majority Leader, one Charles Schumer. This is from the Senate floor today.
Mr. President, the Democratic leader. Funding the government should be a bipartisan effort, but Republicans chose a partisan path, drafting their continuing resolution without any input from congressional Democrats. Because of that, Republicans do not have the votes in the Senate to invoke cloture on the House CR. Our caucus is unified on a clean April 11th CR that will keep the government open and give Congress time to negotiate bipartisan legislation that can pass. We should, Mr. President,
the Democratic leader.
So they are not going to get that bill through the Senate from the sounds of things. And that's fine. Of course, the Congress and the Senate are illegitimate. And I can't imagine Donald Trump's going to sign a piece of legislation coming through from them. I guess we'll see. Doesn't seem like this is going to be the one. Schumer is asking for a different piece of legislation. And will Donald Trump support that legislation when it gets sent back to the House? Let's just take the scenario, okay? Speculating here. If the Senate does not pass this, which they're expected not to, and we will see, then he's saying we could get this other thing passed. Why don't you deal with that in the House? If Donald Trump doesn't support that and says we have this big, beautiful bill. You're the guys who want it passed. I've been supporting the passage of this the whole time, at least on the surface layer he has. I've said many times over the past few weeks, we've tracked it post to post as the narrative has evolved, talking about how, yes, he's saying this thing must pass, but he keeps putting all these impossible hurdles in place of getting it passed. That might be the last one. So they can't pass the big, beautiful bill. The House can't pass the Senate's bill, and the Senate can't pass the House's bill, which is, again, something that we've said the entire time. If that happens, then the government gets shut down. They can't fund their stuff. Trump's hands are totally clean, which is exactly what all of this was meant to be. Again, he's moving the laser pointer around. They're going to have to conquer him, not only in the real layer, in the legitimate layer of the American government somehow, but also beat him in the narrative layer. They can't contest him in any of these layers, which has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt at this point, except for the narrative layer still being run by the Con Inc. thing and the techno-Kabbalists, these neo-Kabbalist tech libertarians. Those narrative layers are still functioning, and people are allowing them to function by continuing to grovel. Oh, I just can't turn off the TV. Oh, you're just jealous because you don't have the size of their following. There's a reason these people aren't censored, and it's not to wake up the normies. It's crazy that people don't understand that the normies could have been woken up 8 years ago and been in the exact same position of supporting the America First agenda as we are by simply being told the truth. Okay? I don't accept that. And I don't know why people do accept that. It is an excuse for lying and for dishonesty and for proactively wanting your friends and family to be hoodwinked. Are your friends and family making bad decisions on the hoodwinking? Mine are. I don't want them to lose their careers or lose their homes because they didn't take any precautions to know that these things would be happening in the future. They could have known. We knew. I mean, I didn't know in 2020 when the very deadly pandemic happened and all of a sudden my 15-year career just went up in smoke. Okay? I didn't know then. But right now, to not know as a federal employee that your job is going to be severely at risk when Donald Trump gets into office, no matter what your contract says, no matter what you think the statutes say, no matter what Congress has funded or any of it, people don't know about their investments, that all their money is saved in fiat currencies and 401ks and retirement portfolios based on companies that are absolutely involved with the global regime's agenda and therefore have to be drained, and therefore their value is going to drop in spectacular ways. And maybe, just maybe, think about some other way to diversify your savings, your portfolio. Lots of time to think about all these things. By the way, I never say this stuff, but you can go look in the show notes and find links to Goldco and to River Bitcoin. I don't know that they're the right answer. I can't promise you that they're the right answer. Okay? But they're some answer that at least provides you some other outs in the case that the thing that is obviously going to fail at some point actually does fail. And it failed in 2020. It's designed to collapse on both layers. Okay? On the good layer, hopefully we preserve the dollar and its stability in some form so that people don't lose everything. And on the other layer, it's designed to collapse so that people who are totally impoverished will immediately accept the central bank's digital currency. That's the agenda. To not prepare for that is insanity. And the reason that people don't believe that stuff is going to happen is because they're still addicted to the television. So the normies aren't actually awake. The project to wake up the normies has not worked. And we keep being thrown shiny objects by Joe Rogan and Ian Carroll. Look, they're saying the Jews on TV. If they're saying the Jews on TV, well, that must be to wake up the normies. Well, no, it could be to distract them from all the other things that are actually happening. But we'll just forget about that, because I know when you go after these so-called conservative characters, it is totally out of bounds. How can you say that against my favorite television characters? Well, it's because I care more about my friends and family than I care about the people on television and the people on Twitter. And it's awfully shocking that all of the people who are trusting the plan as hard as possible don't feel that way. Oh, I'm going to let the television characters wake up my normies. Okay, trust it. Keep trusting it. Let us go to one more economic-related article about what's happening right now with this week of nonstop meltdown. We talked about the blame game on Monday. The blame game is the people on the regime side who understand this is part of the scripted program are attempting to lay all of it at the feet of Donald Trump, his presidency, and the America First movement, along with policies that disrupt the top-down centralized control of the global economy, like tariffs and like trading and association with countries who are run by dictators. They need an explanation. We need an explanation. Our explanation reflects reality and whatever will tear down this awful criminal global regime and the cartel enterprise that supports it. They are attempting to blame Donald Trump. This is CNBC from today. Ray Dalio warns that mounting U.S. debt problems could lead to shocking developments. Now, this video has gone around, and none other than Steve Bannon have spent significant time on it. Sounds a little quiet. Let's get it up there a little bit. Here we are, Ray Dalio. And he is the founder of Bridgewater.
I think the first thing is the debt issue. We have a very severe supply-demand problem. So we think there's debt, and some people think, oh, we'll handle it because we've handled it so far. I don't think they understand the mechanics of that. By the way, I've written the draft of a book that anybody can see on social media.
You know what? I'm gonna ditch that. I think that that's probably too quiet for people to hear, and I think that that's going to ruin things. So let's just start over. Bannon, as I said, hosted this clip on War Room today. So let's just go ahead and we'll play that because the volume, I think, should be more acceptable, and then we'll come back to the article if need be. Here we are.
The debt issue. We have a very severe supply-demand problem. So we think there's debt, and some people think, oh, we'll handle it because we've handled it so far. I don't think they understand the mechanics of debt. By the way, I've written the draft of a book that anybody can see on social media, on particularly LinkedIn, that goes through the mechanics of the debt. But there's a supply-demand problem, so that they have to sell a quantity of debt that the world is not going to want to buy. And that's a set of circumstances that is imminent. Okay, that's paramount importance. Then we're going to have to deal that the deficit must go from what will be projected now to be about 7.2% of GDP to about 3% of GDP. Otherwise, there will be a supply-demand problem. Okay, that's a big deal. You are going to see shocking developments in terms of how that's going to be dealt with. Things that may not have happened in our lifetimes, but things that have happened throughout history. So that's an immediate consideration. Wait, the interest rate.
What do you mean, austerity like that?
There are many. What do you do when you don't have an adequate supply-demand balance? There may be restructurings of debt. There may be exerting pressures on countries to own the debt, to buy the debt, political pressures on countries. There may be cutting the payments to some creditor countries off.
for political reasons and so on. So there may be monetizations of that. If you look at history and see the repeating of what do countries do when they're in this kind of situation, there are lessons from history that repeat. And so just as we're seeing political and geopolitical shifts that seem unimaginable to a lot of people, to most people, if you just look at history, you'll see these things repeating over and over again. So you will be surprised, we will be surprised by some of the developments that will seem equally shocking as those developments that we've seen. So when I look at it, I think that these are of paramount importance. Then we're going to deal with the internal.
Well, that sounds pretty serious. People are going to be surprised. Not everybody. The normies are going to be surprised. That sounds like a serious bit of economic turmoil. And we've seen the early stages of that over the course of this week. We've actually seen them in waves. Again, first during the very deadly pandemic, but at various times as like the market will shift down and adjust. And I think that the drainage thing is happening, and that's what's explaining this, and that it's being done in phases to reduce the shock and impact. These are significant changes coming, and they're going to want to blame them on Donald Trump. And none of the normies out there are prepared for any of this. Why? Because instead they've been led through a series of psyops by idiots, by grovelers, by attention farmers on television and on Twitter. They're farming attention. All the nonsense about the war psyops, all the nonsense about the, and I'm not saying these issues are not at all real, but war psyops, immigration psyops, spaceship psyops, all of it. People go all in, figuring out what the exact details are, as though it was all real. It's not all real. All of it is a distraction. It's scripted. It's been scripted for a long time. Read COVID-19, The Great Reset. Read Klaus Schwab's The Great Narrative. You can know where they're going with these things. You can know at least what their approach is. And as Dalio said, we've seen it throughout history. Monetizing the debt. So is the American Treasury going to buy its own Treasury bonds to increase the money supply to pay for the programs that Congress keeps signing into law, voting into law? How's that going to work? They got to blame somebody. They're trying to blame Trump. It's not going to work because Trump's the cat owner with the laser pointer showing them, go here, go here, go here. And while he does that, and everybody gets to watch the cat scramble around, the regime and its media, as they scramble around trying to figure out what the way they're finally going to get him is going to be, everybody realizes, oh, hey, the regime and its media, well, they don't seem to have any idea of what they're doing. They don't seem to know what they're talking about at all. And so being able to trust them seems crazy. You see, because Donald Trump, he has the people's mandate, and the people, by and large, trust him at this point. I mean, even the fake news polls show him considerably above 50%. Some are 52 and 53. Some are like 57%. And it's obviously much higher than that. It was something like 4 out of 5 people thought that Donald Trump did a great job in his speech before the joint session of Congress last week. And that's a fake news poll. So are they going to believe the regime and the media, or are they going to believe Donald Trump? They'll believe Donald Trump. And Trump has prepared his supporters for this, if only they're willing to listen. Unfortunately, many aren't. They're too concerned with making sure Republicans can win fake elections in 2026 and groveling before television characters for attention on Twitter. Oh, we got to say nice things about Ben Shapiro. We got to say nice things about Glenn Beck and Dan Bongino. They're helping wake up the normies. And if we continue supporting them in their comments, maybe they'll click like and our whole day will be made. Maybe someday, for the podcasters at least, if they like us enough, maybe we'll be popular and get more followers. It's all so pathetic. It's coming. It's coming. And the normies are not prepared at all. They haven't woken up. Fake election after fake election after fake election. The longer we prioritize these fake elections, the worse things will be on us, our friends, and our families. We're going to get the hose again. Well, I'm not, because you can't get the hose if you know the hose is coming. You just simply move out of the way of the hose. Just like, hey, once you've stepped on enough rugs and they've all been pulled, you choose not to step on the rug. Epstein files. Hey, you know what? I got rugged by those things back in 2020, sometimes in 2021, every now and then in 2022. I don't get rugged anymore. I don't step on the rug in the first place. Turns out that the rug's not going to get pulled. Well, we can wait a little while and step on it later after everyone else steps on it. Just wait. Then you don't get rugged. If you admit that these people are lying, if you admit that our elections are fake, then you don't analyze these things as though it's all real. You don't go back to sleep and think, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. Trump's got it now. People are going to get the hose again in a major way. Might start this weekend. We shall see. All right, we're going to take a little break. First off, Ali Stussy in the chat, $10. A hilarious example of how the normie conservatives are being kept years behind the informational timeline. On Facebook, my Conink page posts a meme of "You sound vaccinated" starting a few months ago. And yeah, the shitty thing about that is that it's the fake "You sound vaccinated" meme. And I wonder if the machine will even allow me to pull up that. So the fake "You sound vaccinated" meme got really popular. And my meme, unfortunately, did not, because one of those is not the same impact of the other. The one that you might be familiar with is the Leonardo DiCaprio. It's a shot from the movie Django Unchained, where he is holding his little glass up or little teacup up, whatever it is, as the slave owner. And it says, my new favorite insult, "You sound vaccinated." You sound vaccinated is an observation. It's not an insult. If people take it as insulting, well, then the observation was accurate and it worked. Okay? But it's just an observation. It's not an insult. And that meme takes away the statement element of it. If I post "You sound vaccinated" to a person, it's me engaging that person and making the claim directly. The other meme is for people who are too weak-willed to actually go after liars and retards online. Beachbound 94, $10 APL. We know what that means. All right. Wonderfully done. Now, as I said, there's a piece of content that I want to play. This piece of content shows the greatest and most hilarious dictators in amazing form. The use of AI is honestly incredible. And if only I can find my dictators. Where did they go? Oh, here we are.
Time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying. Oh, it's time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift of all. We can go on pretending day by day that someone somewhere will soon make a change. We are all a part of God's great big family, and the truth, you know, love is all we need. We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones who make a brighter day. So let's start giving. There is a choice we making. We're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a better day. Just you and me.
Well, send them your heart, so they know that someone cares, and the lives will be stronger and free.
As God has shown us, by turning stone to bread,
and so we all must lend a helping hand. We are the world, we are the children.
we are the ones who make a brighter day. So let's start giving. There is a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives.
It's true, we make a better day, just you and me.
Way down and out, and there seems no hope at all. But if you just believe, there's no way we can fall.
Well, let's realize, oh, that a change can only come when we
stand together as one.
Yeah.
We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones who make a brighter day. So let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives. It's true, we'll make a better day, just you and me. We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones who make a brighter day. So let's start
Well, how about that? I thought that was just lovely. What a wonderful collection of characters. Polymath says he's never seen that. Yeah, I think it just came out today. I had never seen it prior to today either. All of the greatest are there. Little Rocket Man, Bolsonaro, Chainsaw Man down in Argentina, Javier Milei, the comedic actor in Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, of course, our boy Who, our boy Yoo-Hoo, the greatest dictator of them all, Nicolas Maduro. Now, I don't know about the Ayatollah. I'm not sure the Ayatollah is our boy just yet, but could be. Just saying, could be. With countries that have been overthrown by the CIA, you got to think, hey, maybe that guy they tell us to hate is not the problem. And Iran would count under that rubric. Okay. Wow. Maybe we're going to get through some more stuff. And then I'm trying to decide whether or not I'll be able to do an episode tomorrow. And I don't want to force another episode this week if I don't have stuff to talk about. There's very little chance I'll be able to do an episode on Friday. So I'm going to try to get one in tomorrow. I'm not certain that's going to be possible either. It's possible that I won't see it till Monday. So let's blaze through some of this stuff. If I don't get through some of the other stuff, maybe we'll do that tomorrow and kind of have like an abbreviated episode, which, and by the way, I mean, abbreviated for this show is an hour and a half or 2 hours. But let's just give it a shot. We'll see where we end up. So today, the Anti-Elon, I think it's it, something like that. My Irish, my Gaelic is not up to snuff, I guess. I know how to say names like Saoirse and Siobhan, and I know Salancha. What else do I know? I love Ireland. I've been there a couple of times. And on one of those times, I got to go see a bunch of awesome castles. And I think like castles in the Middle Ages stuff is just the coolest thing in the entire world. So loved that. But yeah, I'm also a big fan of just sitting in O'Donoghue's in Dublin, drinking a Guinness in a yellow spot while the old Irishmen bring their instruments to the bar and have spontaneous jam sessions of Irish folk music. It is, if I died at O'Donoghue's on a Sunday afternoon, I would die a happy man. I do absolutely love the Irish and Ireland, although I am concerned that it is potentially falling apart. And Steve Bannon actually went off on that today. So regardless, the Prime Minister of Ireland was in the Oval Office today, and there were some interesting elements of that speech. And I think perhaps let's go in reverse order of importance. Let's get the funny stuff out of the way, and then we can get into the more serious stuff. There was a question about one Rosie O'Donnell, and I think it was by Brian. I can't believe I'm not going to think of his name. The reporter from RSBN. I've met that guy before. I guess he's MTG's boyfriend now or something. We'll figure it out.
Happy, fun-loving people, great attitude, many in this room right now that I've met. Why in the world would you let Rosie O'Donnell move to Ireland? I think she's going to lower your happiness level.
That's true. Thank you. I like that question.
Mr.
Do you know
Are you expecting?
Do you know who she is?
Yeah. I'm joking.
You better off not knowing.
President Trump's okay.
Rosie O'Donnell reportedly just moved to Ireland. And so the question was, how do you feel about Rosie O'Donnell being in Ireland now? And I guess the prime minister did not know she had moved there. And Trump said he was better off not knowing who Rosie O'Donnell was. By the way, that's Brian Glenn. Apologies to Brian Glenn for forgetting his name. RSBN has been a place where the Trump rallies have been shown every time they have them for years and years now. And just that alone is enough to respect that organization in my mind. And Brian seems like an awfully nice guy who is 100% on board with the cause. And maybe in the future we'll find out that's not true, but he seems like a good guy. So I apologize for forgetting his name. We also have this strange bit. Truly weird. Where is it? Where is it? Here it is.
I love these socks. What's with these socks?
President Trump.
I'm trying to stay focused, but I'm very impressed with the VP's socks.
What are these socks? I'm trying to stay focused, but I'm very impressed with the VP's socks. So J.D. Vance, another bit of clownery this week. You would think that the memes would have been enough, but no, they are not enough. This is J.D. exclamation point and his shamrock socks. How about that? White socks with green shamrocks and a green tie, really dressed for the occasion to impress the Taoiseach of Ireland. Way to go, JD. You nailed it. Now, the funny thing is, and I forget who sent this on my chat, and maybe I can find it. There we are. From someone named Saoirse. This is from July 4th of 2017. Did Leo in the Irish Independent Did Leo Varadkar outflank Justin Trudeau in Battle of the Socks? They're calling it a sock-off, sock diplomacy. Who knows? Tisa, whatever it is. Leo Varadkar welcomed Canadian Prime Minister at another Irish word that I'm Farmay? Probably not. This morning, as part of his 3-day tour of Ireland, in a nod to Trudeau's appreciation of colorful socks, Varadkar wore a pair of post-box red socks with Mounties and maple leaves. So, sock diplomacy. Look at these words. Crazy people, the Irish. I'm not sure how that story ultimately played out, but we are hearing once again today about sock diplomacy. Who saw that coming? I would suggest the answer is no one. Now, speaking of Canada, let's go to Badlands Media for today. Mark Carney's ties to establishment Democrats exposed. So that's Carney, the new leader of the Liberal Party, who is slated to be the next prime minister. Now, there are theories that he was brought in as a banker to lead Canada through something called probate, as its assets are all shifted, its debts are cleared, so that it then becomes the 51st state of the United States. We are told that is slated to happen at the end of this month. If that theory holds, we shall see. If at the end of this month, in 3 weeks, it is announced that Canada is going to be the 51st state, I would suggest that that decision was made in the past and that process, as described in a video, and by the way, you can find these things always in the information stream on Telegram. I would suggest that theory was probably correct. Newly elected Canadian Prime Minister designate Mark Carney has deep connections to the U.S. Democrat establishment, particularly to John Podesta, a longtime political operative who oversaw a $375 billion Biden-era climate fund. His connection to Podesta is linked through Gerald Butts, a former top advisor to Trudeau, who has been instrumental in shaping Canada's Liberal Party. Also of note, here we are, Carney, a former governor of the Bank of Canada and Bank of England, entered politics with no prior experience but won a decisive victory to lead the Liberal Party. His past connections are now coming under renewed scrutiny, particularly after photos surfaced earlier this year showing him and his wife alongside Ghislaine Maxwell, who was convicted in 2022 for aiding Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking operation. I guess we will see if any of that plays out in the future. It is entirely possible, by the way, that the Epstein thing is going to be another massive rug. And at this point, it's hard to expect it won't be. By the way, I moved on from the Irish too quickly. St. Patrick's Day, of course, is Monday, hence the shamrocks and all of the green. St. Patrick's Day is a ridiculous drinking holiday in the United States, which is virtually just akin to Cinco de Mayo. All of these events have been stripped of their meaning, but St. Patrick's Day was established as an official Christian feast in the early 17th century to commemorate St. Patrick's death and his efforts in bringing Christianity to Ireland. St. Patrick, born Maewyn Succat, in the late 4th century, was a Christian missionary who played a crucial role in converting the pagan Irish to Christianity. After being kidnapped and enslaved in Ireland as a youth, he escaped and later returned as a priest to evangelize the Irish people. And instead, we basically use these sorts of events to get people to leave their religions behind and pursue worldly pleasure in the pagan world. The legend holds that St. Patrick used a 3-leafed shamrock to explain the concept of the Holy Trinity to Irish pagans. And now, of course, it is a good luck symbol to find a 4-leafed clover, which eradicates that idea completely, as the inversion is known to do. Let us move further now on Canada. Again, we'll go to Badlands Media from yesterday. Trump doubles tariffs on Canadian metals to 50%. So once again, we have Donald Trump as the cat owner with the laser pointer, pointing that laser all around, making them chase whatever it is he does. New narrative, new narrative, new narrative, old narrative that they've already disavowed. He just keeps moving everything on them. In a post on Truth Social, Trump stated that he has directed the Commerce Secretary to enforce an additional 25% tariff on Canadian metal products, raising the total tariff to 50%. He also called on Canada to eliminate its substantial tariffs on U.S. dairy products, which range from 250 to 390%, labeling them outrageous. Trump also mentioned plans to declare a national emergency concerning electricity in affected regions where the electricity tariff imposed by Canada would be attempted to be thwarted. Ontario Premier Doug Ford responded on social media, asserting that Ontario's 25% electricity tariff would remain in place until U.S. tariffs are entirely lifted. Now, Donald Trump went off on the electricity issue in a Truth Social post, as they mention there. And let's go to that quickly. Why would our country allow another country to supply us with electricity, even for a small area? Who made these decisions and why? And can you imagine Canada stooping so low as to use electricity that so affects the life of innocent people as a bargaining chip and threat? They will pay a financial price for this so big that it will be read about in history books for many years to come. And the denial of resources is an important thing. Ukraine did that to Crimea after 2014, cutting off the water supply to Crimea, among other things. So just another way of understanding these leverage points and how they've been used to affect foreign policy in the past. And also worth noting that within that Trump post, he was suggesting it is necessary for the U.S. to decouple from Canadian electricity. Everything we need should be fully onshore because we want to be self-sufficient so that anytime the regime tries to cut us off from supplies, from resources, from energy, whatever it is we need from around the world, it won't affect us. Everything can be produced domestically. This is the program they've always used. We talk about the regime overthrow program all the time. They need control over the media, control over the finances, control over resources and trade routes, and then finally over militaries. If we are fully self-sufficient, then the regime, the global regime, cannot affect us down any of those avenues, which makes us impossible for the regime to take over unless they do so ideologically by seizing back control of the media and then watching the rest of the dominoes fall after that. This is how you separate from global media, from global banks. We have taken over, we will have taken over the resources and trade routes. And of course, the U.S. military behind all of this, behind Donald Trump and the government as it exists now. Let us continue. Electricity post, more. Let's listen to Doug Ford, the premier of the state of Ontario. Here he is somewhere. Here he is.
Anna, first of all, thank you for having me on. I start every interview with saying we love Americans. I love Americans, spent 20 years of my life there. And I know Canadians love Americans and vice versa. In saying that, we will not back down. We will be relentless. I apologize to the American people that President Trump decided to have an unprovoked attack on our country. on families, on jobs, and it's unacceptable. Let's work together. Let's get to the table if he has issues, and let's sort this out. You see the market tumbling. Consumer confidence is down. And if he continues on with this, assembly plants in Michigan will shut down, and around the country, whoever makes autos, and as well as businesses. They're going to hurt. And these pensions, when the market goes down, it's going to affect people's pensions. So I'm not too sure why he continues to attack his closest friends and allies, but we need the American people to speak up. We need those CEOs to actually get a backbone and stand in front of them and tell them this is going to be a disaster. It's mass chaos right now. That's what we need.
Well, he'll have a chance to hear from those CEOs today, as we just mentioned.
Sorry, Doug. So Doug Ford says he's not going to back down. And then not too long after that, the Associated Press, Ontario Premier backs down on U.S. electricity hikes, prompting Trump to halt doubling tariffs. So the tariffs are put in, the tariffs are withdrawn or delayed. The tariffs are put in, the tariffs are withdrawn or delayed. Laser pointer all over the place. He mentioned, Doug Ford did, the business leaders around the country and how he needs them to go ahead and step up. Donald Trump actually had a response for that today. By the way, that AP article says that Ford will be meeting with Howard Lutnick on Thursday. And so they'll get it all hashed out in their meeting. But Donald Trump, in response to this idea that business leaders are going to somehow thwart Trump in his plan, has been responding over and over again on Truth Social. GE Aerospace investing $1 billion in U.S. manufacturing. Manufacturing is roaring back. These are from the White House, those two. Howard Lutnick on Fox Business. And then he gets into various CEOs talking about how American manufacturing is back. We're going to build in America. David Solomon from Goldman Sachs says, one of the things that I do like is that the president is engaged with the business community. This administration is engaged with the business community, and that's a different experience than what we've had over the course of the last few years. And he just keeps going on with business leaders and people talking about how great elements of the economy are doing during this changeover. So, as we've been saying now for a couple of weeks, they tried to blame him for the tariffs. Then they tried to blame him for the uncertainty when the tariffs were delayed, because the markets, they need certainty. And then they try to blame him for the markets. Is any of this to blame for the market drop? No, of course it's not. The things that Ray Dalio described and drainage are the reasons the market is dropping. And so it's all just narrative layer stuff while Donald Trump changes the excuse, and the media has to respond. The regime has to respond by changing their explanations. They never win that narrative battle. They never win the actual battle. They are completely screwed. Here is Howard Lutnick with CBS News. And Howard Lutnick is quite the happy-go-lucky sort of guy. And if I could only just find him. Too many clips. This is what happens when there are... Where did he go? Oh, I know where it is. Apologies. I have to go to YouTube. Hold for processing. Hold for processing. Here is Howard Lutnick.
75. We have a $36 trillion deficit. And we used to run deficits of $400 billion. Now $2 trillion. Everybody's like, who cares? I tell you what, who cares? Donald Trump cares. And when we balance the budget, you know what that means? That means our deficits stop. Interest rates come smashing down. His goal is to have external revenue. You know, the way I think about it, we all are so used to paying taxes. We're so used to it. We have like Stockholm syndrome. You know, don't stop the Internal Revenue Service, God forbid. How about this? The rest of the world leans on our economy, breathes off our economy. Not only is our economy $29 trillion GDP, but we consume $20 trillion a year. We are the buyer of everybody's stuff. We buy everybody's stuff. So who's more important, The people who sell stuff or the people who buy stuff? So we are the buyer of everybody's commodities, products, goods and services. Everything comes from us, right? Let them pay a membership fee. We all understand that model. Let them pay. How about we, you and I, and every single person we know pay less? How about no tax on tips? How about no tax on overtime? How about no Social Security? How about all those things? These are the kind of thoughts that will change America. I know what his goal is. No tax for anybody who makes less than $150,000 a year. That's his goal.
So
that's what I'm working for.
So you're saying when it looks chaotic and unpredictable from the outside, that there actually is a master plan when it comes to these tariffs?
It is not chaotic. And the only one who thinks it's chaotic is someone who's being silly. He said reciprocal tariffs.
Nobody expected him to announce 50% tariffs this morning.
He needed to break some guy in Ontario who said he was going to tax American energy 25%. The president of the United States in the White House says, oh, no, you won't, and breaks him. Breaks him. In what? By a tweet and a truth. And you think that's chaotic? You know what I think that is? I think that is the thank God we have a president who's taking care of us. Because if you were in one of those states and you thought your energy prices were going to go up 25%, and you said, where's the president? And all of a sudden he came down like thunder to make that end, you'd say, cool. I'm glad that's the guy in the White House. And that's what we've got.
The president.
Now, I am just going to say that if you remember, June 14th, 2024, Donald Trump's birthday, by the way. This year episode, Read My Lips, No Taxes. I would suggest anyone who wants to know what I think is going to happen with the taxes, go back and listen to that. I still support all of those ideas. They seem to be very close to fruition at this point. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, no tax for anybody who makes under $150,000. And, oh, yeah, we're also going to introduce crypto into the market, which they're going to have a real hard time tracking, at least like for purposes of taxation, because they can't extract it from you. So no taxes coming up soon. Also, if the government's not spending ridiculous amounts of money because we don't have a bloated and wasteful federal government that just sends money to implement an agenda and fills the coffers of Democrat states and poorly, I mean, there's no difference between the states at this point in terms of their governments. It's all terrible. But once we're not sending hundreds of billions of dollars to California every time they decide to light things on fire, maybe we will have a different scenario. Maybe we will not need that sort of tax money. No taxes is a realistic future that people should expect and should work in that direction and do their own part, however they see fit. The future is possible. The taxes are not constitutional. Taxation is theft, and no one has to stand for it. And we will close down on this today. And I had a bunch of Ukraine and Russia stuff lined up. Maybe we'll get to that tomorrow if we're able to do that. But CNN today, it'll be tough for Trump to dig his way out of this one. Lovely picture of Peter Navarro. But let's just skip down, and we're just going to do a couple of paragraphs here. It's not a brilliant article. It's about how his tariffs will never, ever work, and just all the stuff he's done has already destroyed the economy. He's going to be so screwed, according to people who have been wrong about everything for years and years and years, most particularly Scott Lincicome of the Cato Institute, who is a clown and never Trumper. But from the article, Trump has been provided with multiple escape routes and off-ramps. His advisors and economic brain trust, including Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett, have been frequent guests on cable and network news shows, on which they called Trump's tariff policy fluid and have noted good progress with foreign countries on negotiations on key disputes like fentanyl and immigration crackdowns. At times, Trump has appeared to take the hint. He has twice tapped the brakes on Canadian and Mexican tariff plans, pushed back the apparent date in which dollar-for-dollar reciprocal tariffs would go into effect, paused the de minimis exclusion and this weekend delayed dairy and lumber tariffs that he said would go into effect by now. And on Tuesday, officials from Canada and the U.S. agreed to meet later this week to negotiate their trade disagreements, a potential détente in an escalating trade war. But it seems as though Trump simply can't help himself. Just when you think he's out, he pulls himself back in. Trump has become addicted to tariffs because of the kind of concessions he can gain from them. In exchange for a threatening social media post and a promised meeting, Ontario backed away from punishing electricity surcharges. And we are somehow supposed to believe that all of that isn't a win for Trump. That somehow, because the media says so, Trump looks like a fool. And he's causing all this uncertainty that is causing the markets to collapse, even though the markets are by and large just fine, except for certain sectors who are going to be affected by all of the things that Ray Dalio described. And then, let me see if I can just find this real quickly. I'm not sure I'll be able to, but it just occurred to me how great a post this is. And I think we are going to find it. I think the machine is working to my benefit this time. Here it is. Maybe this will be a fun way to go out, and we might even have a little Jeremy Irons. This is Edward Dowd, who, let me see if I can hover, founder of Finance Technologies, and I believe that he was part of Goldman Sachs, but don't quote me on that. Speculation and food for thought. What if a large number of these corrupt NGOs were investing in the stock market with the expectation of continued taxpayer funding? What if Doge has changed those expectations, with some even liquidating before they are caught? What if the NGOs were the price insensitive marginal buyer? That would explain the drop in the markets this week in full, and it would track exactly with drainage and the rest of it. Totally corrupt. Let's check out Jeremy Irons, and I will try to find the name of this movie. I can't remember it offhand.
Let me tell you something, Mr. Sullivan. Do you care to know why I'm in this chair with you all? I mean, why I earn the big bucks?
Yes.
I'm here for one reason and one reason alone. I'm here to guess what the music might do a week, a month, a year from now. That's it. Nothing more. And standing here tonight, I'm afraid that I don't hear a thing. Just silence.
The movie, by the way, is called Margin Call. And so we shall see. I may be back tomorrow, may be back Friday. I may not be back until Monday. And who knows? The world may have changed by then. I don't expect that to happen. Every time I expect that to happen, it doesn't happen. And I think that all of you can relate to that. Even when the good things happen that we're told make the whole world change, it's like, it's basically the same as before. So with that, I will be back very soon, sooner or later. Wait a second. Team Smooth, $5, getting it right in at the end. Shut it down. No taxes. And you didn't say it, but I'm still feeling it. All right. And with that, I will be back soon at the same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic, and Joe Biden was never president.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
What's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our time.
It's not true. It's more true than I would perhaps prefer.
Can we stop this cruel game and allow the boy to keep one shred of dignity? For God's sakes! I can't stand to see him in all this pain! You vicious bastards! Let him move in with you! Is it so bad to see somebody happy? So just let him move in! For the love of God, let the boy move in with you! Good Lord!
And I will not let you down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What? In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the range.